This is PS1, Chapter 1, Part 1 on the nature of science. In this portion of the video lecture, we will be discussing the methods of science, what science is, and why we study it. Science is our attempt to understand the natural and physical world around us. So science studies things that are bound in the natural world and the physical world. So things, for example, like ghost hunting. Those activities are usually called supernatural or paranormal. Super meaning above, and para, that Latin root, meaning around. So supernatural or paranormal things do not fit in our definition of science because those things are not found in the natural and physical world. Things that are found in the natural world, we can study plants, we can study animals, we can study the matter of things, we can study the earth itself, we can study space. Those things are within the umbrella of science. There are three major categories of science. In biology, you will be taking a look at life science, which is the study of living things and how they interact with each other and how those living things interact with their environment. Earth science is a branch that we will be taking a look at in PS2. We can take a look at Earth and space systems, things like earthquakes and volcanoes and the universe, the solar system, different galaxies. We can study those things within the realm of Earth science. And physical science, which is what we will be concentrating on for PS1. Physical science is the study of matter, and matter is anything that is made that you can see, that you can touch, and maybe even things that you can't really directly see or touch are also made of matter. And we'll also take a look at energy in physical science, taking a look at how energy transfers from one object to another, as well as energy of motion. Science, again, because it's our attempt to understand the natural and physical world, science explains nature. And of course, as more is learned, we can use that new information to better inform ourselves. We can also use that new information to develop new technologies. And we will be focusing in on technology in Chapter 2. So through experimenting and modeling and demonstrating, scientists learn by performing investigations. So this is how scientists learn new information about the natural world. Investigations in science don't necessarily have to be in a laboratory setting. Scientists can perform their investigations, of course, in a laboratory setting. In some cases, these investigations may need to be performed out in the real world, especially with investigations of different technologies. Those are going to have to be used, and different people are going to have to go through a process of how to use that technology and what it's for. So investigations can be of all different types in science, but that's how scientists learn new things. And all good scientists will learn new things by the scientific method. It is an organized set of investigation procedures that every good scientist follows. It's like a standard for their research. And there are 6 steps, and we will go through each one and explain. The first thing that a scientist will do in an investigation is state a problem. Many investigations begin by observations. So you are noticing something, you're seeing it, you're hearing it, you're perhaps smelling it, you are maybe tasting it or touching it, using those 5 senses to take in the world around you, and then posing a question, usually a why or a how. That's the problem that a scientist tries to solve using the scientific method. So once a question has been asked, again, good scientists will do a little bit of background research and gathering information. So they want to learn as much as possible about the background of their problem or their question that they're posing. They have to learn how to go through the information and find out what is helpful to them and what information isn't helpful to them. And we will be doing a little bit of that through our labs and activities this quarter. So next, after a scientist finds out all of the background information that they can, they form what's called a hypothesis. A hypothesis is a possible explanation for a problem based on observations, as well as your background research. Sometimes a hypothesis is called an educated guess. I don't like that definition because a guess would maybe kind of give someone the hint that the scientist doesn't really know what's going on, and that a guess is just kind of some random thing that they come up with. A hypothesis is more like a prediction. The scientist is so ready to experiment that they can predict the results. They have looked at their observations, they've done their research, and they're going to predict the results before the experiment occurs. Now, in order to test a hypothesis, now you'll notice that in order to test a hypothesis, a scientist will have to perform their investigation, perform their experiment to test their hypothesis. So they can do that by either making direct observations, or in some cases, they may be building models or computer simulations to test out their hypothesis. But the one misconception about science and scientists is that they start an investigation with an experiment. You'll notice we don't get to our experiment until the fourth step of the scientific method. So it's a big misconception that a scientist will immediately jump into a lab and start putting things in test tubes and beakers or putting things into a computer. That happens a lot later in the method. We do have to get our background information first. So performing the experiment, you're going to test the effect of one thing on another using what we call controlled conditions. Controlled conditions would be considered like a laboratory situation. So you can control every variable if need be. Sometimes experiments can't always be in a laboratory setting. If you were experimenting on a new type of airbag in a car, you're going to need to go out and you're going to need to test the reaction time of that airbag, the rate of fill time, etc. You're going to have to go out and do that on the road for consumer safety. Some experiments in the life science category, if you are studying chimpanzees in Africa, you can't capture chimpanzees in Africa, bring them back, put them in a lab, and see how they naturally would behave, because that's not a natural environment for them. You have to go to that natural environment to observe their behaviors. So if possible, experiments should be done in a controlled setting. If not, the scientist has to do the best that they can with controlling as much as they can out in the field. So the things that you're testing are called variables. A variable is a factor that can cause a change in the result of an experiment. Now, any good experiment is only going to have one factor at a time being tested. That way, when you get your results, you know that the change that occurred was because of your variable changing and not some kind of random coincidence, okay? So if we're going to take a look at how flowers grow in different types of soil, I am going to perhaps maybe have my one variable of fertilizer versus no fertilizer. So then I know if my plants grew well in the fertilizer and they didn't grow well in soil without fertilizer, the growth rate was due to the fact that the fertilizer was in the soil. It wasn't because of some random chance or coincidence. So the dependent variable is the variable that changes according to changes in other variables. Your dependent variable is basically the results of your experiment. So the dependent variable shows results from the manipulation or the change in the experiment. So in this case with the soil experiment, my dependent variable would be how much more plants grew in fertilizer versus no fertilizer. The fertilizer itself would be the independent variable. So that's what I'm changing to see how it will affect my results or dependent variable. So you change or manipulate the independent variable to get your results. In most experiments, we need to make sure that whatever group that we are testing, whether it be the control group or the experimental group, that everybody plays by the same rules, or every experiment has the same rules. We call those constants. A constant is a factor that does not change when other variables change. So constants stay the same. The only thing that will change in your experiment is that independent variable. Controls. These are the standards that you compare your results to. Again, the control in my plant experiment would be the soil without fertilizer. Again, that way I know that if my plants grew better in fertilizer, it was because the fertilizer helped the plants grow more and not some other kind of coincidence. So controls are another type of coincidence eliminator. So after we've performed our experiment, more than likely multiple times, we can take a look at analyzing the data. So this is recording your observations and organizing the experiment or the test data into tables or graphs or charts. It's important to organize your data in a very logical manner, because if you don't, then you can actually come to a wrong conclusion. So in some cases, scientists may have the correct hypothesis, but if your data isn't organized in a logical way, they could arrive at an incorrect answer. So once we've analyzed the data, of course, now we need to draw a conclusion. So is the hypothesis supported? Does my data suggest that my hypothesis was correct, or is it rejected? For a hypothesis to be valid and widely accepted in the scientific community, experiments have to give the same result every time it's repeated. Good science is repeatable science. In science, because scientists are people as well, scientists have to make sure that they are not being what is called biased. A bias is an expectation from somebody on how the results are viewed. So a scientist cannot have any sort of emotional involvement. They cannot have an agenda of sorts. They cannot manipulate their data to get the result that they want to see. So a science has to be very cut and dry and very black and white when it comes to analyzing their data. And this has been PS1, Chapter 1, Part 1 on the methods of science.